This is Dallas, Texas. On November 22nd, 1963, President John F. Kennedy was assassinated here in Dealey Plaza. Hello, I'm Edwin Newman. It was 12:30 p.m. President Kennedy was on his first official visit to Texas. The streets of the city were jammed, but Dealey Plaza was near the end of the president's route, and fewer people had gathered to watch. That November morning, when Dallas was to witness the most notorious murder in modern American history, President Kennedy had had an unusually warm welcome. As the motorcade entered Dealey Plaza, Nellie Connolly, wife of the governor of Texas, turned to the president and said, "Mr. Kennedy, you can't say Dallas doesn't love you." Moments later, the youngest president in American history was gunned down. He was rushed to nearby Parkland Hospital. 30 minutes later came the announcement: the President of the United States is dead. A wave of shock and grief swept much of the world. In a few seconds, the man many believed to be the best hope of his generation was gone. All the shots were fired from the 6th floor of this building on the corner, the Texas School Book Depository. That is, according to the official inquiry. Many eyewitnesses were convinced that the fatal shots came from this area in front and to the right of the motorcade, known as the Grassy Knoll. That same day, an employee of the Texas School Book Depository, Lee Harvey Oswald, was arrested following the killing of police patrolman J.D. Tippit. Later, at the Dallas Police Department, he was also charged with the assassination of the president. Oswald was a former Marine and defector to the Soviet Union. When he returned to the United States with a Russian wife, he publicly professed support for Fidel Castro.
We advocate restoration of diplomatic, trade, and tourist relations with Cuba.
There is the president. There is Lee Oswald. He's been shot. He's been shot.
Within 48 hours of Kennedy's death, Oswald was himself dead, shot in the basement of the Dallas Police Department by Jack Ruby, a local nightclub owner. The Warren Commission, headed by Chief Justice Earl Warren, was appointed by the new president, Lyndon Johnson, to investigate the assassination. It concluded that Oswald and Oswald alone shot the president. There was no conspiracy. But doubts remained, and in the mid-1970s, a new investigation by a House of Representatives Select Committee reached a more ambiguous conclusion. Oswald was guilty, but there was a high probability of another gunman in Dealey Plaza. It was from up here on the Grassy Knoll that a Dallas citizen named Abraham Zapruder inadvertently filmed the assassination. A terrible image of the president's death was preserved for posterity. Zapruder's film, now enhanced by computer, also offers tantalizing clues about the source of the fatal shots. And what of Lee Harvey Oswald? He claimed to be innocent, a fall guy, to use his own words, just a patsy. In the eyes of the American government, he is condemned as President Kennedy's killer. Yet in his own violent death, Oswald was denied the fundamental right of every American, the right to legal representation and a fair trial. At the same time, the American people were denied the right to see justice done in the crime of the century. The trial you are about to see will be as close as possible to a real trial. There is no script, there has been no rehearsal. The judge is a real judge, the lawyers are lawyers, and the witnesses are all genuine. No actor will be playing Lee Harvey Oswald. The defendant's chair is empty. Prosecuting Lee Harvey Oswald is Vincent Bugliosi of Los Angeles. Mr. Bugliosi achieved national prominence when he successfully prosecuted mass murderer Charles Manson. Lee Harvey Oswald's defense counsel is Gerry Spence of Jackson, Wyoming. Mr. Spence has not lost a case before a jury for 17 years. He became nationally prominent when he won $10 million for the family of nuclear worker Karen Silkwood. The jury is made up of citizens of Dallas, Texas, drawn from the official court rolls. Presiding is Judge Lucius Bunton of the Western District of Texas. Judge Bunton has been on the federal bench since 1979 and is a former Texas district attorney.
Please rise. Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. The District Court of the Northern District of Texas, sitting in Dallas, the Honorable Lucius D. Bunton, Judge presiding, is now open pursuant to adjournment. All ye that have business before these court draw nigh, and ye shall be heard. God save the United States and this your honorable court. The court is in session. Please be seated.
Good morning. Members of the jury, happy to see that you made it off the freeway today and that you arrived here. We're happy to have you. In just a minute, I'm going to call for announcements in this particular case. And I would ask, if you would please, just to listen attentively to the clerk and to the announcements by the court and the attorneys that will speak to you in just a few minutes. Mr. Clerk, if you would please call this next case for announcements.
The United States of America versus Lee Harvey Oswald.
Prosecution ready?
Yes, Your Honor.
Defendant ready?
Defendant's ready, Your Honor.
Let me explain just a little bit about how we'll proceed during the course of this proceeding. First, we'll have opening statements. First by the government, since the burden is on the United States government to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Since they have that burden, they have the opportunity to go first with an opening statement. Then an opening statement will be made by Mr. Spence. These opening statements are not evidence. Evidence you're going to get from the witness stand or from exhibits that come in during the course of the trial or from stipulations. That's where the attorneys agree that something is a fact. That's the evidence. And it's from those facts, that evidence, that you will determine whether the defendant is guilty or not guilty. So you may proceed, sir.
Mr. Spence, Judge Bunton, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I don't have to tell you that you've been called upon to sit as the jury on perhaps the most important murder case ever tried in this country. In any political assassination, ladies and gentlemen, almost as inevitably as death and taxes, there is always a chorus of critics screaming the word conspiracy before the fatal bullet has even come to rest. The evidence that will be presented at this trial will show that there is no substance to the persistent charge by these critics that Lee Harvey Oswald was just a patsy set up to take the fall by some elaborate conspiracy. We expect the evidence, all of the evidence, to show that Lee Harvey Oswald, acting alone, was responsible for the assassination of John F. Kennedy. We expect the defense, in an anemic effort to deflect suspicion away from Mr. Oswald, to offer theories, speculation, conjecture, but not one speck of credible evidence that any other person or group murdered President Kennedy and framed Lee Harvey Oswald for the murder that they committed. As this trial unfolds, you will see how utterly preposterous the allegation of a frame-up is. The evidence at this trial will produce a vivid and a rather stark psychological portrait of Oswald as a deeply disturbed and maladjusted man. It will show him to be a fanatical Marxist who restlessly searched for a country to embody the Marxist dream. The evidence will show that on the morning of the assassination, November the 22nd, 1963, Oswald carried his weapon, a 6.5 millimeter Mannlicher Carcano rifle, into his place of employment at the Texas School Book Depository building. The presidential motorcade was scheduled to pass right in front of that building that very noon. At 12:30 p.m., as the president's limousine drove slowly by, 3 shots rang out from the southeasternmost window on the 6th floor of that building, one of which penetrated President Kennedy's upper right back, exited the front of his throat, another entering the right rear of his head and exiting and shattering the right frontal area of his head. As the presidential limousine screeched away to Parkland Memorial Hospital, where he was pronounced dead, the president, his lifeblood gushing from his body, lay mortally wounded in his wife Jacqueline's lap. Within minutes of the assassination, Oswald's rifle was found on the same 6th floor, the floor from which Oswald had brutally cut down at the age of only 46, the 35th president of these United States. The evidence will show that Oswald's rifle, to the exclusion of all other weapons, was determined by firearms experts to be the rifle that fired the 2 bullets that struck down President Kennedy. The evidence will further show that just 45 minutes after the assassination, Oswald, in frantic flight from what he had just done, shot and killed Dallas police officer J.D. Tippit, running from the scene of the murder to a theater where he was arrested and subdued after drawing his revolver on one of the arresting officers. Much more evidence, ladies and gentlemen, much more will be produced at this trial, irresistibly connecting Oswald and no other person or group to the assassination. I have every confidence that after you folks fairly and objectively evaluate all of the evidence in this case, you will find that Lee Harvey Oswald, and Lee Harvey Oswald alone, was responsible for the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Bugliosi. Mr. Spence?
Thank you, Your Honor. Morning, ladies and gentlemen. For 20 years now, we have all been told that my client, Lee Harvey Oswald, killed our beloved president. And Mr. Bugliosi knows that that's what you think, that that's what we think, that that's what even I thought when I began the preparation of the defense of this case. And so I want to take a little more time than he to evaluate the history that's occurred over all of these years to determine whether or not, in fact, you haven't been carrying with you a national lie. And whether or not, in this case, you don't want to undo by your verdict a national lie. Now, one thing, folks, that we know is that you've watched him do it already. You've watched him walk up here and tell you that Lee was a commie, and we hate commies. And he's told you that Lee was a madman, and we hate madmen. And so what he has done is to look at you and say, this isn't a fair jury at all. This is a jury full of prejudice and hatred and passion that I can work with and work on. And so I will make this jury hate Lee Harvey Oswald before he ever had a trial. You understand, of course, in this case, that my client, Lee Harvey Oswald, never had an opportunity to come before you and to speak to you and to look at you and to have you look at him. My client, Lee Harvey Oswald, was slain by an assassin's bullet. He was silenced so that he could never tell you the truth. And now it's my job somehow to try to find some way to bring some parts of the truth to you. Not all of the truth, because as we discover before this case is over, the truth in this case has been concealed from us. And before it's over, you'll need to turn to Mr. Bugliosi and ask him, why haven't you, even now, even these 20 years later, why haven't you, Mr. Bugliosi, who represents the United States of America, who represents the CIA and the FBI and the Army Intelligence and the Secret Service, who represents this huge plethora of power in this country, why haven't you even now come forward with the whole truth? It's like there is a closet over here, and the closet door is locked, and we don't know what's in the closet door. And they say to us, Tell us, in your defense of Lee Harvey Oswald, what is in the closet. And I say, open up the closet door so we can give it to the jury. And you will find that when this case is concluded, the door will still be locked. Now, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we're going to find out in this assassination, that the key information that we need for making any kind of decision is gone. You heard Mr. Bugliosi come up and tell you where the shots were fired from. That's in dispute. There's hardly anybody in the country that doesn't dispute it. We'll find out that there is only one way, ladies and gentlemen, that you can ever determine where the bullet came from. Did it come from back or the front? Mr. Bugliosi wants to make sure that it came from the back, because if it came from the back, he can claim that it was Lee. But if there is evidence that it came from the front, it was somebody else. When this case is over, ladies and gentlemen, you'll go back to the jury room, and there will be one verdict, unfortunately, that you can return, and that is a verdict that says we don't know. We just don't know. We wish we did know. We wish the closet door were unlocked. And because we don't know, because they won't unlock the closet, because they have been unfair, because they have secreted and hidden the truth from us, we have only one choice. And that's to say that the government still, after 20 years, has refused to come forward with the facts in this sad case about our great president, and that you, therefore, as honest jurors, must return a verdict of not guilty. Thank you very much.